Episode 5 of Apple TV Plus Servant Season 2 is titled Cake. The Turners stumble to prepare for a pivotal meeting. Leanne bakes a mysterious cake. Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with my weekly recap, breakdown, and review of the latest episode of Apple TV Plus Servant Season 2, Episode 5, which was titled Cake. And we get some backstory, some more backstory with Leanne, and who knows if she's trying to bring back that mannequin in the form of her mother. We're going to break it all down, this spoiler review, but before we dive into it, as you all can see on the screen now, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, which all those links are in the description below. If you are new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert from when I drop new content. It would mean a lot to me if you all can like and share this review. It really helps out the channel, but I also appreciate all the support. And I do these reviews every single week to interact with you all, so let me know your thoughts in the comments, your pros, your cons, your thoughts and theories about that mannequin, about Leanne's past, about her trauma. Let's discuss it all in the comments below. So my initial thoughts before I get into the recap: I've seen the episode twice now. The first viewing, I was kind of like, oh man, I really want to kind of get the emotional response from last week's episode with the abuse that Dorothy gave to Leanne. And I was just like, oh, I really want to pick that up. But it was really interesting because they do kind of follow it up with the trauma that Leanne might have faced as when she was a kid. And we hear about her mom treated her, and her mom was a drunk and all that. And I think it's interesting how that parallels how she might have felt when she was a little girl with her mother, and how, you know, she dresses up this mannequin to represent her mom, and we'll talk about that here. But it's interesting how Dorothy is essentially treating her like worse than the cult might have treated her, maybe even worse than her mother. So I think it's really interesting, that parallel that we get, and seeing that trauma from Leanne's point of view, which I thought was excellently played by the actress. And I thought that this wasn't as good as wasn't the follow-up I was hoping for, but I still think it's enough information, and also sets the stage for, again, that mannequin. We know Leanne can bring things back to life, and she mentions in this episode that when Toby, and we'll talk about it here in a bit, when Toby says, "What happened to your mom?" she says, she didn't say she was dead, she just says she was burning. So let me know your thoughts and your theories, and overall, if you enjoyed or if you didn't like this episode. Let's go ahead and start the conversation in the comments below. But let's get into the recap here. As the episode opens up, we see Leanne reciting her name several times, and she's from Wisconsin. And my special skill is baking cakes, as we see her saying this in front of the mannequin that she made. Now, again, if I'm not mistaken, I think that she told Sean that the mannequin was initially, or one of the mannequins she made was supposed to represent the woman she was taking care of that was sick in the pizza episode. But no, now this new mannequin is representing her mother, and there's a lot of signs to show that. Number one, it seems like she was reciting those lines to her mother as if her mother was there, as if that was something she used to do as a child, because as we learned in this episode, her mother was really kind of hard on her. Again, she drank bourbon. She seemed to be very about herself, self-absorbing. She didn't really seem to be the best mother for Leanne, so it almost seemed like she was talking to her mother like she was a little kid, like preparing for a pageant. So it was a really, again, interesting way to see Leanne's perspective, and I just feel so bad for Leanne, and we'll talk about that here in a bit. But again, I think her pretending to recite these lines for her mother is because she feels like her mother might be coming back maybe sooner rather than later. But as we kind of move forward, she starts to hear music playing downstairs, which the door is open. She makes her way downstairs, and she finds Dorothy cooking a cake, or cooking breakfast, as you say, pancakes, for Dorothy and a potential guest coming pretty soon, who we'll talk about here in a bit. We see Leanne notices that the door is locked. Again, just think about the situation, man. They have her kidnapped. This is worse treatment than I imagine that the Lesser Saints give her. Again, this is almost like their own cult that Dorothy is kind of creating. We see Sean is afraid of her. Julian doesn't know what to do with her. Dorothy has created her own cult, ladies and gentlemen. It's the Turner's cult. She is psychotic, and we'll talk about that here in a bit. But we see that Dorothy says that her and Sean has agreed to kind of let her out of the house between certain times of the day. We also, let me just go back to Dorothy for a second. She is so psychotic because literally just last week, we saw her pulling Leanne by her hair, choking Leanne. We saw her bury her in the dirt. In the next, I assume this is the next day, or maybe a couple days after that treatment, she's making her pancakes. Because she even says in this episode, "Oh, we forgot to feed you over the weekend." Like, what the hell is wrong with Dorothy? And more particularly, what's wrong with Sean? Why isn't Sean, like, obviously we know Sean is protecting her feelings and all that, but come on, Sean. She literally almost killed Leanne a couple days ago. So it is just so crazy seeing the Turner's family, how they think they're the good guys, they're the ones, the victims, and we see the treatment that they're putting on Leanne. Privilege, I tell you, the Turners just don't know. I'm loving what the show is doing with the Turners, because again, it's like a pendulum with the show. You feel bad for Sean and their situation at times, but then it swings back, and then you feel bad for Dorothy, or let's just say Leanne. It's just back and forth. It's a good show, and this is why I love this show. But nonetheless, we move forward. We see Sean is clearly not okay with this, but he's still playing along with his cult leader's instructions, aka Dorothy. We move forward, and we see that it is Toby that is the special guest that's coming for breakfast. We see him try to apologize for kidnapping Leanne the last time he saw her, again under the instructions and being blackmailed to kidnap her. Again, the cult leader, Dorothy, the Turner's cult leader. And again, this treatment, we don't know what the environment was like for the Lesser Saints and Leanne. I don't imagine it was that great, but this treatment that again, the abuse, the verbal abuse, the physical abuse, locking her in the attic. This is just, I feel so bad for Leanne. I truly do. And we cut to, I really wanted to kind of get a little bit more of understanding from Dorothy's perspective last week. She kind of acknowledges the treatment, but she really doesn't take acceptance of the torment that she's putting on this young girl, the trauma that she's giving her. And I hope that we do address that, because again, last week's episode made it seem that the 2 a.m., which I talked about in my review last week, it seemed like she was going to snap out of this kind of state that she was in, and she realizes now that what she did to Jericho. But she doesn't. Either she does realize what she did, she remembers it, and she's just continuing to suppress it, or she hasn't clicked yet. It hasn't clicked that she was responsible for the death of Jericho. So let me know if you all think that at this moment in this episode, Dorothy is either A, aware of what happened from last week's result, that she remembered what happened at 2 a.m. and her body is remembering what she's doing, and her body's kind of like, you were responsible for the death of your son? Or do you all think she still hasn't come to realization of what she did to Jericho? Let me know in your comments. Let's discuss that in the comment section. So see Leanne making notes of how to prep this cake. And again, she's reciting the ingredients in front of this mannequin, aka Mama Mannequin, Leanne's past mom. We'll talk about that in a bit. But Dorothy gets a teeny tiny little baby in the mail with the message attached to it. It's a $200,000 ransom, and it is not from Julian, as Sean and Julian believe it is from Uncle George and the Lesser Saints. But we know that they're not really into money. We know that from last year. They refused to get money. So we'll talk about that moment in a little bit. But Julian takes from the secret stash the money and gives it to Dorothy like he's being a good guy. We know Julian wouldn't give that much money to his sister, even though he claims he loves her. But either way, we see a really interesting moment. We continue to see these little side clips, subplots, and we got this even in the first season about people like coming up missing and just like random news reports. But this season, we keep hearing about Julian eating the chicken sandwich. We saw the people fighting for this chicken sandwich. We see in this week, there's a reporter, I can't think of the reporter's name from last year, but she's on a blind date. It's a restaurant that has a pretty interesting idea. If it was real, it might be real in real life, but there's a blind date restaurant where you can go and meet people. But again, what is this undertone? What is this subplot? Let me know your theories and thoughts. Is it a throwaway thing that we shouldn't pay attention to, or is there something we should be looking into with the chicken sandwich, the restaurant, and all that stuff? Let me know your thoughts there. And also, is it me, but where the heck is the Jericho doll? The last time we saw him, he was in the spacesuit, and he went from the chair to the couch, and no one moved him. So is the doll just running around the house, and just no one's paying attention to it? Let me know your thoughts on that. But back to the recap, we see that they're willing to sell everything in their house, in particular their wine, and we know how obsessed they are with drinking wine. So they are really taking this very seriously. All the materialistic things, they're willing to throw it away for their child Jericho. So really interesting stuff that we're seeing from the turn, the lengths they're willing to go through. But cut to Leanne getting the ingredients for the cake. She leaves the basement, and we see that she's looking down at the hole that she was left in to die, or to remember who was in control of the situation, Dorothy. And it's almost like the show puts these rat sounds. It's almost like there was a piece of Leanne left in that hole. Really interesting thought there, like a piece of her soul, a piece of her humanity is in that hole. I thought that was a really interesting moment that we get there. But we see that at this point, Leanne has taken clothes out of Dorothy's closet and put it on her mannequin because it looks better on her mannequin. And we'll talk about why she dresses up that mannequin in particularly. Julian is left to babysit Leanne and Toby and play on their little play date as we see Leanne preps the fruit cake, something that Leanne mom taught her. And we see that that is her one skill. She has no other skills except for that. And it is a way to kind of show her value. After all this suffering, we cut to seeing Sean and Dorothy at the mall. And we see Julian is looking over their iPads and their, FaceTiming. And we see Roscoe's return. Now, I am surprised that Roscoe's back in the situation, especially after the trauma he's suffered. Again, these Turner people are very easy with words. We see what Dorothy's able to do and have people doing her commands. Julian is able to get Roscoe back in the situation after he had his situation being taken. Again, the Turners are really slick with their mouth, but either way, we see them talking about the transaction. He's going to be there to oversee the transaction over perfect Wi-Fi. Again, however they're able to get their iPad and their iPhone to their TV, and they can go to the mall, have perfect internet, and I'm just nitpicking at this point, but either way, we go to seeing Leanne and hearing more about her past, as it sounds like her mother was a drunk, and also we see that she sound like she wasn't treated well, and it's almost, again, the parallels of how her mom might have treated her versus how Dorothy is treating her is something to keep in mind as we see she puts that little mini baby that she ordered in the cake. But going back to this backstory, we see that she mentions that her mom, every Sunday, she would bake this cake and she would dress in her Sunday's best, which hints to the mannequin. She's taking clothes from Dorothy's closet to put on her mother her best dress. As we see that she talks about her mother when she would find the cake and almost like mocking her and saying, "I'm the special one. Say I'm the special one." Again, the trauma, the treatment that Leanne has had suffering. It's a lot of crazy stuff. And then another thing to take in mind with this scene as she's making this cake with Toby says after he learns his mom that Leanne's mom was not the best, "What happened to your mom, Leanne?" She didn't say she was dead. As we learned last season that her and her family died in a fire. She doesn't say that she's dead. She just says that she's burning. Is she alive somewhere? We know Leanne has special powers besides making cake. Wrapping up the episode, surprise, surprise, Toby's hiding in the attic with Leanne. I'd imagine they're playing Kiss like they did last season, but the party is cut short because Julian realizes that it was Leanne that actually set up this ransom. He kicks Toby out and asks, "Why did you do this? Dorothy's going through all this." And Leanne looks at him right in the face and says, "I want to see her get what she deserves." Again, we all know when you're on Leanne's bad side, that's not a good thing for you, Dorothy. And we'll see. You got it coming, I'm not going to lie. So the episode ends with, it was kind of a weird scene when we see the Turners leaving the mall, and then Uncle George takes the phone and says, "Hello, Julian." I thought that scene was a little weird, a little kind of awkwardly executed, to say the least. We see that they go to the house. At this point, we see Julian's taking the cake out and glazed it. He goes to the door. To his surprise, we see Uncle George is a guest now at the Turner's house. We know that he likes to pop in and out whenever he likes, but he asks where Leanne is. We cut to the end of the episode where we see Leanne eating the cake that she made in front of her homemade mom in her nice dress. The lights in the background are starting to flicker. She's staring at this mannequin as she's eating the cake, and she gets the baby and looks at her mom. I wanted her to say, "Am I special?" or, "I'm special now, Mom." But it's really interesting because as she's looking at the cake and we see the lights flickering in the background, is she bringing this mannequin back to life or bringing her mother into this mannequin like she did with the Jericho doll? Is she going to bring her mom into this situation to really kind of one-up Dorothy? You think you're bad, Dorothy. Let me introduce you to my mom. And we know that she has, again, more than special abilities. She has more than she can do more than bake a cake. She can bring people back to life. Really good episode. Again, I watched it twice. The first watch, I was just like, oh man, I really want to kind of pick up emotionally from how Dorothy treated Leanne, but I really like this backstory, this trauma, this understanding of how Leanne was raised and how we can parallel her mother's treatment towards her, how Dorothy's treating her. And again, the descendant of Dorothy just becoming this mom of concern to just becoming a villain and becoming a cult leader in her own right. And again, I think that this episode really focuses on the trauma that Leanne has suffered. I just feel so bad for her. At first, you know, again, this show is a pendulum. Season 1, you're just like, oh man, we can't trust Leanne, but you're starting to see that this young girl has suffered so much at a young age, whether it be her mom, the Lesser Saints, now Dorothy. So hey man, I'm rooting for Leanne. We'll see what happens, but I really enjoyed this episode titled Cake. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, your thoughts, your theories, your pros, your cons, and what you all hope to see in next week's review, or I should say next week's episode. Is the mannequin coming to life? Uncle George going to stay for a while? Are we going to see some, I don't know, Lesser Saints coming to the mix? Where's Aunt May? Let's discuss it all in the comments. And also, where the hell is that Jericho doll? Where's the doll? Let me know in the comments. As always, make sure to like and share this video. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Hope you're staying safe. And we'll see you in the next video.